Hey, welcome to my channel. I am and today I am having a talk with you all about ADHD, in particular for women and mums. This video was actually really inspired by a friend of mine who sent me a message, and believe it or not, it's literally the same message that I get almost monthly, almost fortnightly in my inbox since I became public and have shared my ADHD journey, which pretty much, like, since the moment I got my diagnosis, I have been public with my with ADHD and my journey with it, and purely because I believe that we're in a world where if we don't share our differences, that then they keep getting swept under the rug and ignored, and that the world can't change if we don't call for the change, or essentially if we don't ask for help, there will be no help. So I wanted to share with you guys, I guess, the three top things that I often get asked in and around ADHD, and share a little bit about my journey with my diagnosis. So basically I have recorded this video so many times. I've lost footage. I have already edited this video basically almost to the end, and I'm still having to come back and revisit and refilm it because it was so all over the place and I got lost in my stories, and so I'm going to try and cut it right down. A couple of things before we get into it. I would love to hear your story below. A big part of why I've rebooted my YouTube channel is because I want to build community and connect with you guys. So please, I'd love to hear your ADHD stories below. If you're new to your ADHD, or if you've had it for a really long time and you've known about it, sorry, like we've always had it, but if you haven't fully discovered your ADHD genius yet, I'd love to hear about it below. But otherwise, please leave a comment, like, subscribe if you enjoy the video, and pass it on to someone if you think that they might need it or could use that support. So, little disclaimer, I am not a doctor. This is my journey and what I'm doing to treat my ADHD. My circumstances are a little different, and so unless you're kind of in the same boat, I suggest that you do seek a diagnosis if it's available to you, if it's financially available to you. I understand that that's not possible for everybody, but I do recommend getting a diagnosis before you change things up. But at the same time, a lot of these things are really easy and natural, or even like non-medical ways that you can deal with this just to make your life better, easier, and more productive. And that's why I rebooted. One of the other reasons I rebooted the channel is because I want to share my journey in becoming human, essentially, with you all, as well as my my journey of taking those experiences and what wisdom comes out of them. You know, I think it's really powerful to realize that this journey of ADHD, and also going through the process of getting an autism diagnosis, it's actually been profoundly spiritual and humbling. So it's definitely something that I want to share with you all and be here to support you guys, because I know that when we get a diagnosis, or even before we get our diagnosis and we have this realization, like, I think this is what it is, and so many of you that message me going like, I think I have ADHD, or I think I have autism, or I just got my diagnosis. Like, so many of you are at the beginning of your journey, and there's just so much to learn and to shift and change your whole lifestyle to ensure that you've created a life and foundation that is actually going to make things better for you. And I truly believe that. I'm in that process and have been in that process for almost 12 months now of changing my habits, my systems, my foundations in literally in every area of my life, from my home life to my business to my marriage to finances to my laundry systems. Like, all those things are changing, and most of it has been doing a lot of research, and so I want to be able to pass that on with you all too. I've got three things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to be talking about diagnosis, about diet, and we're going to be talking about habits and behavioral therapies. And those are the three things that are the main things that I think you need to look at when it comes to ADHD. And these are things that I know can make it better and that can help support it. I don't believe that ADHD needs a cure. I don't believe also that autism needs a cure. It's a way that our brains are wired, and because they are wired differently, we have different needs. We live in a society where ADHD and autism doesn't necessarily have, like, it's not friendly. All right, it's built for neurotypicals. It's built for one-way productivity. It's built for people who are able to use their executive function in a really easy, effortless way, where it doesn't take a lot of energy for them to do it, whereas for people with ADHD, it takes so much more energy to exist in the world because ADHD is an executive dysfunction, basically where we struggle to put the steps together, to find ways to kind of do what everybody else can do. The way I like to look at it is essentially it's how to be human in everyday sense of the word. It is being able to do your laundry, it's being able to keep up and be on time, it's about being able to navigate relationships without impulsivity or getting bored of them or getting bored of the things that we do, or it's impulse, like how to not impulse spend and how to save healthy, or how to navigate all of these kind of minefields of being human and what it means to be human. And a big part of my life has literally been trying to work out what was wrong with me. Like, why can't I do what everyone else is doing? Why am I so different? I mean, I am such an incredibly creative person, and a lot of my ADHD traits, my need to know things and my curiosity and my ability to pick up an instrument and work out how to play it really quickly, or being able to create art in a really fast way, or my curiosity for like learning things and trying new things has been amazing. It's been a huge part of my journey, but at the same time I would often get this process of people going, oh, you're so good at all of these things, but why can't you clean up your room? You must be lazy. Or you'd get, and it comes from a nice, a loving place, but often you have your parents that are like, why can't you clean up your room, or like, can you do the dishes, or can you do whatever, and like your whole body just can't deal with it. And for me it was a mixture of sensory processing disorder and ADHD, leading into a lot of things that I couldn't do based on smell, touch. For me, like, doing the dishes as a kid was an absolute meltdown, to the point of like my heart would break. I would fall on the floor. I literally physically couldn't move to do it, and my parents would push and push and push and push to try and get me to do it, and it just wasn't happening for me. It was probably the most traumatic part of my childhood, was doing the dishes, which I'm blessed for, but it's one of those things where you try your hardest, and even when you're trying your hardest, you fall short. And when I became an adult, the hardest thing was the fact that you become a mother, and being a mother requires your executive function to be on point, and then you take away sleep, you take away nutrition, you go through hormonal changes and pregnancy and birth and breastfeeding, and still trying to keep the house organized and clean, but because your brain as a child doesn't really take in building systems or building healthy habits, growing up, you're not really able to put all of those things together as an adult already to make it function. And so it can be really heartbreaking to go through that process of becoming a mother and realizing you have no clue what you're doing. And it's not just you have no clue about being a mother, because like, I find most people with ADHD to be incredibly loving and full of empathy and understanding, but sometimes love isn't enough when it comes to parenthood, because your children need you. They need you to be able to do the dishes. They need you to keep the house clean. They need you to be able to have the energy to play with them and sit down with them and be present with them. And it's very hard to do those things when your executive function is throwing everything at you all at once, and there's no order to it, and you cannot work out how to do that. And so it was middle of 2020 that I got my diagnosis. My official diagnosis was inattentive ADHD with hypersensitivity thrown into the mix, which is sensory processing disorder, and with the recommendation that I go and get a formal autism diagnosis, because my psychiatrist wasn't able to do that. You have to get the right people who can diagnose that. So with that in mind, I was handed a prescription for medication. I proceeded to go and see my chemist. My chemist informed me that there were no medications that were especially stimulant, because that's what I needed, was a stimulant medication that would help my ADHD, that was safe for me to have whilst breastfeeding. And there was a big part of me that felt like it wasn't the right thing for me to take medication, and I truly believe that there is a way for me to overcome this through self-compassion and practice and patience, to make my life better and my family life better. And so also in tow, my psychiatrist had told me, they hadn't mentioned the breastfeeding part, but they had told me that if I do have autism, based on what they have seen, that they believe that having some kind of medication may actually make my sensitivities and my autistic traits a lot more pronounced. And so it was take medication with the potential of making basically all the things that actually make my life really difficult to exist in the world 10 times worse. And so, being that my chemist's advice meets that little piece of information, I decided it was not right for me to take medication, and I do believe that there are people out there who do definitely respond really well, and I think there are times in your life when things like ADHD medication or anxiety medication or depression medication, those things are needed and really are going to support you, but I also do believe that there is always the other option, and I think these things need to work. You know, they can work together, they can work alone, but it's really about finding the balance of the two. So what I recommend is that you get a diagnosis. How you can do that is you go to your GP. I really suggest that you do a little bit of research, write down a list of all the things that you have noticed about yourself that mean that are your, like, these are your kind of ADHD traits that you believe that you are experiencing, what your day-to-day life kind of looks like. Give the doctor proof, and then be like, I would really like a referral to a psychiatrist. Psychiatrists can actually prescribe you medication, so that's why a psychiatrist. So get your referral to a psychiatrist and then get your diagnosis. ADHD in women looks very different to ADHD in guys and in kids. But the problem is that a lot of people will go and see their doctor and say, I think I have ADHD. They're older, and because they're older, a lot of doctors may say, sorry, that's a childhood diagnosis, not an adult thing. You grow out of it, which is what has happened to my husband. He went to go get a referral and was told, sorry, you are too old to have ADHD, which is absolute bogus. It's a lifelong thing. It just kind of blew me away. So not every doctor is educated in that, and so it's really important that when you do go see your doctor, if they say, sorry, don't think it is, that you go and get a second opinion. So you can do that, go and get your referral, and then go see a psychiatrist. Here in Australia there is a bit of a wait to get in to see psychiatrists, mental health care. There's a lot, there's so many, there's a lot of people waiting to get diagnoses, and even for autism it's about a 10-month wait, I think, on average. But there are a lot of places that you can go to, like Headspace, there's Autism SA, there are so many places that you can go to get your diagnosis, and I'm pretty sure mine was bulk billed as well, so that was pretty lucky as well. So those of you in Australia, most places you can get it bulk billed, some don't, but it'll cost you, if you've got private health cover, you have that, but otherwise, yeah, definitely get it definitely get a diagnosis, because it will, I think the biggest thing, sorry guys, you're just gonna have to deal with it, because the baby's sleeping. This is the only time I can. Why? So yeah, getting my diagnosis, the best thing that came out of it was self-compassion and self-forgiveness. And even though I went through a massive process, and I have been going through this massive process of like a bit of self-identity questioning, and who am I, what am I here for, and it's everything that I've experienced, is that what was that my truth, like what is that? And so I kind of came to the point of like realizing, like, this is who I am, I'm integrating this part of myself, I'm learning how to actually exist and coexist in the world. And whilst it was really hard to have that realization, it grounded me in a way that I haven't been grounded before. And so taking that time to really forgive myself for all the situations where I failed, where it was seen as failure, I now really truly believe, like, nothing is a failure, all things are learning processes, but I still carried that weight that I was a failure, and that I didn't live up to my potential, and that I didn't do what I needed to do. And because that's the thing, is that I've always been considered very clever and very smart, very intelligent, but why was I not living up to my potential, or why wasn't I fully executing what I should be executing? So that was probably the best thing about my diagnosis, was the self-compassion and self-forgiveness. Okay, number 2. Number 2 is nutrition and diet. We think that ADHD is just like, why is my brain not working? Why can't I do this? But ADHD plays so much into, like, so much of your body, right? It's not just the brain. What it is it's your body mind communication going on there. And something that I had no idea about, and couldn't understand what was going on, until I discovered that as a woman with ADHD, it's so much. No, too soon. Jinxed it. It's so much about your hormonal health, your gut health, as well as your own mental health. So things that are really important for women in particular to look at is looking at, are your hormones in balance? If your hormones aren't in balance, that's going to play a massive role in how your body is communicating. So for instance, at the moment I have a hormonal imbalance, thanks to breastfeeding and giving birth to my children. And so what I find is, literally from the point of me ovulating in the middle of my cycle, around about 2 weeks in, I tend to get really confused, a little bit lost, a little bit all over the place. I am not thinking clearly, or my brain doesn't quite process things as easily as I would like it to. I become more forgetful, I tend to be later, I want to sleep more, and things just don't operate the way that I want them to. And so knowing that, during that time I will take more of my tools in my next point, more of those tools, and add them in during that time to really help myself to stay on track, to make sure things still run smoothly for my family. Because whilst, pre-kids, I'd probably just like bum around and basically do nothing during that time to really just honor the fact that my body's taking a lot longer to process. I would also just follow my dopamine, because with ADHD, that's what your brain's seeking, is dopamine to help it run better. It's a dopamine deficiency, so often your brain's like trying to find the things that'll light it up to make it go. But when your hormones are down, you're feeling down, it's a lot harder for you to get motivated, to want to do things, to be on time, to be focused, and especially during that PMS phase. But then I find about probably day 3 or 4 of my period, things tend to get a lot better, and things kind of go back to being good old, relatively normal me. And then the other thing is looking at your gut health. So your gut health, we know that the gut really is the main brain, the main communicating agent in our body now. So much information out there about gut health. And so if you have an imbalance with your gut bacteria, which is then playing into not only your mental health, your ability to have like clarity and all of that, mixing that in with a hormonal imbalance, which often like your gut health can play into your hormones as well. All of those things are so deeply interconnected, and so it's really, really important that we focus on really solid nutrition, making sure that you have a healthy gut balance, and also focusing on getting a really solid hormonal balance as well. So make sure that you get those things checked off. You can see a really good naturopath or nutritionist to look at all of those things. Somebody who specializes in hormones and gut is really going to help you, and someone who understands ADHD. So see if you can seek someone out in your area that can help you with that. But also when you're looking at nutrition, things that are really important is that ADHD brains really, really function well on a high good fats diet. So things like avocado, nuts, seeds, peanut butter, tahini, omegas and omega-3. So you want to look at like fish oils or fish, all of those things that are really, really, really good for the brain. Also find that when I'm having really, really bad function, sometimes I'll cook up a stock full of like lots and lots of like bone marrow, a bone broth stock, that's what I mean. And I find that really helps. If I do a couple of days of really working with that really helps. But that also helps with repairing the gut. So looking at that is really, really helpful. The other thing that I actually find that's really helpful for me, I'm really, really sensitive to caffeine. And so whilst I can see why going on a stimulant medication probably wouldn't be the best thing for me, coffee in very small amounts, so just having like a small teacup amount of coffee, 1 in the morning, 1 in the middle of the day, and 1 at the end of the day, just small amounts, actually I find helps me to keep my focus a lot better. I have to be careful because I do notice that if I go over that small size cup, I do get a lot of anxiety, and it triggers that and my sensitivities a lot more. But coffee has been used to treat ADHD in kids as well, which is really interesting, and it really helps them to function without having to put them on a full-blown stimulant. So I'm using coffee as a form of medication to help my ADHD, and I noticed that it really helps me quite a bit. So yeah, looking at making sure that you're eating really well. Maybe if you get onto a multivitamin and a really solid good fish oil, I'm sure that there are vegan friendly options for omega or like good oils and good fats out there as well. I don't know them off the top of my head, but if you're vegan and you know of them, or vegetarian, please link that below so that I can share that as well, because I'd love to know, and also would love to try. I'm still in that phase of trial and error in and around my diet and my physical health, and I'm in the process of really wanting to dive deep into gut health and hormonal health myself. But what I have done so far, taking some supplements and stuff in and around hormonal balance, those things have really worked while I've remembered to take them, and have been really supportive. It's also very hard to build habits with ADHD, so I often will take them for about a week and then I'll forget, and I'll be like, oh, that was working really well for me, but I just keep forgetting to take them. So that is leading me now into number 3, which is about behavioral therapies. Looking at things like how you have your habits, how you have your systems, and what those things kind of look like in your life. So when it comes to your daily behavior, what you wouldn't realize until you take a moment to sit back and observe, and this is something so important, is that with ADHD and your journey with understanding where you're at, is sitting back and observing your day-to-day behavior. So you might want to do that by getting out your diary and just taking note on everything that you're doing during the day. Sometimes you can get an app on your phone to see how many hours you're spending on screens, and or like just tracking. I think that's why a lot of people love the bullet journal, is like that you can put in a habit tracker, and if you're able to keep the habit of writing it in, even if it's just for a day, or maybe just if you can focus enough for a week, or maybe even like 2 or 3 days, to see what you're kind of doing, because it doesn't matter whether the habits are good or bad. You already have a daily system in place, how you run your day. So in our household, it's always get up, have coffee, feed kids, make sure that they're dressed. It's the same thing all the time. And what you may not realize is that that system, if you put some tweaks in there, you're actually going to make the day run smoother. So you may have a system, but you may not have solid cleaning systems in place. You may not have habits that are going to really benefit you. So you may wake up and straight away you're on your phone scrolling, or you may wake up and not get dressed and stay in your pajamas until 12 o'clock in the day, because you know what, like we're mums who stay at home, and you know what, pajamas are so comfortable. I love my pajamas. But sometimes it's really important for us to do things like build in the habit. This is one that I've done, is I built in the habit of, as soon as I'm out of bed and I've been to the toilet, I will get up straight away, even sometimes before I get up and go pee, I will put my clothing on, like my shirt, my bra, my undies, my pants, making sure that I'm fully dressed for the day. And sometimes I'll even go and straight away go and clean my face, put my makeup on and do my hair before I even get to the kitchen, because I know sometimes that if I don't do it then, I won't do it until at least nap time, which is around 12 o'clock for the kids. So it's really important to build in healthy habits in and around. This is self-worth, right? The big thing about ADHD is that self-care is a really hard thing to do when you don't have the habits already in there. The same as daily self-care, and what self-care means to me is doing the laundry, doing the dishes, making sure that I'm dressed, making sure that I have a haircut, or make sure that I remember to brush my teeth, or all of those things, or even taking a shower every second day. It's something that is really hard for me to do that, especially when I have sensitivities that make me go, I don't want to get in the water, I don't want to touch soap, I don't want to feel the sensation transition from dry to wet. There are so many aspects in self-care habits that are so sensory that make it really hard to build those habits in the first place. So seeing what habits you already have in place, make a plan to change them, and change them one at a time. Do not, and I know it's so tempting, but do not dive in and try and change your entire life in 1 week. It's not going to happen. I wish it was the case, but you need to realize that this life overhaul that you're about to do and that you're embarking on is exactly that. It is completely life-changing. It is a complete lifestyle change, and it's going to take time. I've been on this path for about 6 months, maybe longer now. I think it's about 12 months now, that I've been working on changing my behaviors, my patterns, and I'm still nowhere near where I want to be. However, I am so much better off than what I was. Now actually doing things like this is what's realistic. For me, it's more realistic to have shorter hair because sensory wise it's really hard for me to deal with keeping long hair and brushing it and having to wash it every day and doing all of that stuff. It's too much. Down to like making sure that my laundry is more simplified because I just making sure our systems are like fully integrated into our family, and that takes time. Foundations take time. Even doing things like building a budget, meal planning, creating an organized system of living for us is really, really hard. However, like with the things that we require in our life, it takes so much to build those systems for us, and it's mentally hard, physically hard. It's hard. So that's something that's really, really important. You need to like realize it's not about doing more, because when you push to do more with ADHD and with your brain the way it's wired, the more you push it, the less likely you want to do it. And the best way you can do this is start to look at things like how you have your habits, what your habits are currently, and then working on shifting and changing them into a way that's going to work for you. It's not about everybody else's systems and habits out there. It's about how it will work for you and in the home that you live in, because every home and house and place is different. But building those systems are really, really important, and especially having tools that will support you when you're not in the right mind frame. So some of the tools that I'm using are, I use a Pomodoro app, which I'm going to try and put a video up for you whilst I'm talking now. But essentially what it is it's a timer that goes for 25 minutes, and then it gives you a 5-minute break, and then you do another 25 minutes. And what I find that tool alone has been huge in changing my motivation to do things around the house. So there are some days where it's not going to happen, and we got to acknowledge that on those days, those are the days where you need to seek out self-care through the form of seeking your dopamine, be it through creativity, be it through, and I want you to try to not use social media as your dopamine hit, but sometimes 5 minutes of TikTok is enough dopamine hit for you to then have that energy to then step into your creativity. And if that's what it is that you need to do, that's what you need to do. The way that I'm overhauling my life now is choosing to start creating these videos, because it's giving me enough of a drive to want to be excited about the projects that I need to do in my life. And I think that that's really, really powerful to use the leverage of your curiosities and your dopamine drive to make life better. And it's that whole thing about the wolves, you have the wolf that is destructive behavior, and there's the wolf that's the curiosity and creative behavior, and you gotta choose who you're gonna feed today. So are you gonna feed your coping mechanisms, or are you gonna find something that's gonna light you up and spark a passion? And so that's really truly what it comes down to. Choose to find some way to feed that dopamine in a healthy way. Feed your brain the dopamine in a healthy way. And then you get to build some solid habits and systems in and around that, and find a way to be passionate about building them. Because honestly, you will not build these systems without that passion, without that drive to want to change it. Because what I hate to tell you is that unless you are really, really willing and desiring this change, it's not going to happen. And another system I really like is working towards having a more minimal lifestyle. Whilst I'm by no means a minimalist, I definitely believe in less stuff, less clutter, an easier process for the mind. And I fully support living a minimal lifestyle with ADHD, because I do believe that when we have more open space that we can see things easier, the better it will be. So definitely looking at building systems and habits, it's going to really support you in kind of overhauling your life, and it is that foundation in which your whole life can run. And I think that often most of us with ADHD will come through life thinking you just show up and you just do in the moment, but there are actually systems in there that when you build them into your own habits, because I'm a big believer of like effortless, easy internal working, so that you've done it enough times that it's easy. And what's the hard thing is that when you're starting this process, is that it is going to be hard to begin with, but eventually habits become that. They become habits. You build those systems in so they become effortless. And not only for you, when you're doing it the way that you're doing it, eventually your husband or your wife or your kids will start to follow along, because you will have a place for everything. You will have a system for everything and how to do it. And the whole family will get involved, because the truth is, right, as mums, we are the ones that run the house. We are the ones that have our finger in every situation in our family's lives, and we dictate it. And so we are the ones that are responsible for our life working the way we want it to work. And if it's not working the way that it is currently, it's time to really make some changes. I'm going to leave it with that. If I could tell you anything about your ADHD and who you are right now, is the best thing you can do right now is be very, very compassionate to yourself, be kind to yourself, and just know that you're wired differently. It doesn't mean that you're broken. And I think that when you realize that and start to really understand and grasp that, it's not about how you exist in your home life, it's about who you are at the core, and who you are at the core is a really good, solid human being. Just give yourself a big hug from me, and know that you're not alone, and that having ADHD is not the end of the world, that you're not like I said, you're not broken, and that there is a way to make your life better. It just doesn't look like the Instagram photos out there, and it doesn't look like the neurotypical way to do it. That there is a way for us that opens up for it to be a lot easier than what we're currently experiencing. So guys, if you liked today's video, if you want to share your story below, I'd love to hear it. And please leave a like, subscribe, make sure you hit the notification bell so you do get these videos. Thanks guys, and I'll see you on the next video.